Can you really reset your body and achieve peak cellular health by intentionally abstaining from water and food? Dry fasting, a forgotten health practice, is once again experiencing a resurgence of popularity and is reshaping the way we think about stem cell production, regenerative medicine, getting the body so healthy that chronic health conditions just disappear, and perhaps most notably, radically alter the biological aging process. Join me and guest Theo Lucier as we unpack the science, share personal experiments, and explore how lifestyle tweaks can unlock new levels of health. Some of the many things that we unpack together include the science of the phase angle test and why this overlooked biomarker is crucial to understand your biological age, cellular health, and just how rapidly and profoundly dry fasting can impact this when not much else does. We also explore what to expect when dry fasting, how it compares to a more traditional water fast, the benefits associated uniquely with dry fasting, practical tips and tricks to dry fast a safe and effective way, the key tenets that you must not violate if you want to experience the same clinically validated benefits of dry fasting. We also talk about the role of bathing in water while dry fasting. You can't drink it, but you can bathe in it. And cold water immersion in general. This is part 2 of my interview with Theo. Theo Lucier is a biohacking entrepreneur, a supplement formulator, and natural health researcher, helping people escape burnout and restore vibrant energy, all by powering up the body's natural healing intelligence. If you're interested in learning about dry fasting, I wrote an article, and you can find that by searching Outlier, Outlier, and then the words dry fasting. I will also put that in the show notes for this episode, which you can find at mindbodypeak.com/189. I also plan on experimenting with dry fasting in January or February of 2025. I'll be taking a biological age test before and after to see what kind of impact one course has on my overall rate of aging, plus my overall health. Okay, I hope you enjoy this episode with Theo Lucier. Theo, I want to go on to discussing a topic that I thought was going to be the focus of this entire episode, and that is dry fasting. You've alluded to it briefly, but as using the detox strategies such as the niacin sauna and EDTA to prepare for that. Let's go into the world of dry fasting now.
Well, I would say it's the world's hardest detox. That's kind of after my 7-day experience recently. That's definitely what I'm calling it. But really, there's 2 reasons why you would want to consider a dry fast.
Let's first define what dry fasting even is, in case people haven't even heard of dry fasting.
You're gonna have 0 food and 0 water for 1, 2, 3, 5, or 7 days. And in the case of a Russian dry fasting clinic where they're treating somebody with a chronic disease, it's going to be 11 days. So that's no food, no water, nothing. It's pretty hardcore. So then the next question is, oh my God, you're going to die after 3 or 4 days. Like, why would you do that? It activates a different enzymatic pathway in your body. So when you do water fasting, your body is going to rely on a process called gluconeogenesis to generate energy. So it's going to take protein in your body, like muscle, and it's going to break it down into sugar and use that for energy. Your heart is a muscle. So it's going to start breaking that stuff down and use it. And you're going to lose muscle mass when you do a wet fast. If you do a dry fast, a different enzymatic pathway is turned on. You actually don't lose muscle. You don't get gluconeogenesis. But what does happen is that fat and then scar tissue, tumors, dysregulated cells are called senescent cells, where they're kind of functioning, but not really. It shreds those up for fat. It's like really aggressive autophagy on steroids. So, you think of people doing intermittent fasting or 1 meal a day, you have that autophagy during the day. It's like that times a million. And it's just imagine this big cleanup crew going through your body and it's just shredding unhelpful tissue. And then if you make it to day 4, you get a stem cell release. You make it to day 6, you get a second stem cell release. And that's kind of, besides the cellular detox component, that is the main reason to do it. I mean, you could fly down to Mexico, get a stem cell treatment for 30 grand. A lot of them will die at the injection site, or you could get your own perfect stem cells that your body makes for you and just get this endogenous treatment all on your own for free. I mean, dry
What's the
fasting is free.
magnitude of effect size from your own stem cells through this process? Like I guess because numbers are one thing, but it's not just numbers. It's like the body's ability to use those, like the bioavailability, I guess, of your own stem cells versus ones you would get injected. Like, are you getting a therapeutic effect of this, or is it just like a nice clinical number, but not necessarily meaningful?
No, for dry fasting, it's a therapeutic effect. And so I would recommend, have you read Dr. Philonof's book yet? So anything that he's translated into English, read, because he's got studies referenced in there. It's a therapeutic effect because that's the thing with dry fasting. Like, if you interrupt these cycles, you can retard your body's ability to make stem cells in the future. So if you do a 5-day dry fast and you quit during the stem cell release portion, you're gonna harm your stem cell production. It's a huge amount. And then if you make it to day 6, you get a second wave. You can feel it when it happens. It's really tiring. I mean, I would say, what convinced me, man, is like I read the Phoenix Protocol and I was like, man, I don't know. I mean, it made sense and he's got all the data in there to back it up. I'm like, I'm going to do this, but I wasn't excited about it. And then I was on this really long flight, and most of August Dunning's videos on his YouTube channel are short. And so I just downloaded them all to my laptop and I watched them from the very first one to it was like a couple years later. I watched them on like 2x speed and I was just taking notes. And you can watch him de-age. I mean, at the first video, he starts off and you're like, geez, man, this guy looks pretty rough. And then 2 years later, he's like sleek. He's like trim. He's got more muscle on. He looks younger. He's got fewer wrinkles. His skin tone looks better. And you're like, whoa. Okay. Like, what else do I need to know here? So yeah, it is a therapeutic amount of stem cells.
Interesting. Yeah, that's the book I'm reading, The Phoenix Protocol by August Dunning. I had a couple questions so far. I think since you're more immersed in this world, you'd understand it more than I have, because I haven't actually looked into a lot of the research he's cited. One of the things you mentioned is gluconeogenesis, or breaking down of tissue, specifically skeletal muscle tissue and everything, as being one of the consequences of going without food if you are consuming water at the same time.
Correct.
So what he says is that your body uses a different pathway, and I think it has to do with the hypothalamus and antidiuretic hormone and like epinephrine, but then that pathway chooses preferentially, for lack of a better term, to burn body fat instead of skeletal muscle. Why is that? And is that the case only when you're not consuming any water as well?
I don't know. Like, the biochemical pathway is so complex. And most of that research is in Russian. It's only, hardly any of it's been translated. What Dunning used to write that book is pretty much what's available in English. I think it's a survival mechanism. I mean, clearly humans went through many periods in our evolution where there was no food and no water available, and the body just flips this switch, which is like, okay, cool. We're going to shred 100 grams of fat and we're going to get 115 grams of endogenous water. Great. And then we're going to use the glycerol or whatever it is from the fat for energy, and we're gonna switch to a ketone metabolism instead of a glucose metabolism. So I mean, the speculation that I read around that is that it's literally a survival mechanism. And you usually only get stem cells when you're injured, right? And so I mean, it's kind of like an injury to the body. I mean, it's like literally trying to help you stay alive, which is why they recommend. I mean, if you're doing a 7 day dry fast, they recommend, once a year at most. I think Dunning used to recommend twice a year for that, but he no longer does. I found a 5 day was a lot easier than a 7 day.
Yeah, that
Those
makes sense.
those last 2 days make a big difference, but but yeah, I mean, it's got to be a survival mechanism, right?
Yeah. The prevailing wisdom is that whenever you're going long periods without carbohydrates, and that's why some people say carbs are not essential because your body
Mhm.
can use gluconeogenesis to create its own. Usually the consequences is you're shredding your tissue, your vital tissues, as August Dunning
Mhm.
calls it in the book. And that's eventually perhaps your bone, it's your brain tissue, which is really high in cortisol receptors.
Yeah.
It's your muscle tissue. It's a lot of different things like that. And what's interesting about this is that he proposes an alternate mechanism. And I'd assume that there is research that's been done to show that this is what's happening. Because otherwise, how can you go against the grain and state this is the mechanism if there isn't any proof?
The Russians did it. So they have 60 plus years of clinical proof. I mean, one of the researchers, he went 30 days, no food, no water, just to prove it could be done. But they've done. I mean, there's whole clinics over there that they treat people using this. There's just not a lot of language on it, or language. There's not a lot of information on it in the English language. So I mean, me just kind of liking to experiment and being who I am, I just kind of jumped in and did it. I mean, my first one was a 5 day, which was a mistake. If I could do that over again, I would do a one, and then a two, and then a three, and then if you make it to day three and you don't stop, then you're locked into five, because then you're going to get into the stem cell release, because it's very specific cycles. But yeah, I would work up to it. I mean, I do 1 day dry fast pretty regularly. And I think those will be mainstream,
Uh,
in a few years, because it resets your gut just like so fast. Like if you have some gut inflammation, you got leaky gut, you ate something that is causing bloat, whatever, it completely resets that.
One of the things I found interesting is he was talking about water production and urine production,
Mm-hmm.
and how even though you haven't consumed anything for a day, 2 days, 5 days, your body's still producing urine. It's not like you just completely stopped going to the bathroom. And
Yeah.
he was describing, like, which makes sense from like molecular biology perspective, that your body is creating metabolic water, which is like the most important form of water to have and to
Mm-hmm.
consume. I mean, I guess you can't really consume it because whenever you consume water, your body has to convert that water into like bioavailable, usable metabolic water.
The water of life, they call it. Yeah. I would say so. That's true. So my urine output went up, both dry fasts. I tracked it, and the stuff that comes out of there, man. I don't know what it was, but I mean, my first 5 day, it was like gray. Like as soon as it settled in the jar, there was like black and gray. I mean, it was crazy. So but yeah, your urine production goes up because the autophagy, the ketosis, the ketotic state gets greater and greater, and so your body's just ripping apart fat and senescent cells and tumors and what have you. And yeah, it does go up, and it sounds weird, but you're not thirsty. It's really weird. Your mouth is dry, and that's a bummer, and it's kind of annoying. But you're not thirsty and you're not hungry. This 7 day one, as crazy as it sounds, I wasn't hungry the whole time.
Whoa.
And I really want to max out this one. So I fasted, I did a water fast the day before to help burn through the glucose that my liver was holding on to.
Mm.
And then you're still doing a water fast after it ended. So I just doing a water fast for 3 days after to slowly wake up my digestive system, like water and broth, and like just very gentle. But yeah, it's oof, man, I'm not in a hurry to do it again, but geez, the benefits have been great. Like this, so the water of life thing you're talking about, I think Dunning talks about a little bit in his book, but the Russians talk about it a lot. It's water carries information, right? Like it has a memory to it. And so it's informed by all these inputs into your body. So you're not inputting anything into your body, and then your body is shredding apart this fat to release water. That water is super pure. It doesn't contain any harmful information. apparently, according to the Russians. What I can say is that after I recovered from the dry fast, I had a lot more coherence,
Hmm.
my approach to life. So, when you structure water, they say it's ordered water or it's coherent, right? Like this light that's coming at me from here, it's unstructured. It's just like a cloud of light, where a laser beam is coherent, it's focused.
Yeah.
So the same thing when you structure water. And the Russians say that this water of life you get that is produced inside your body during dry fast is the same thing. And I have noticed, like, since the end of this one, I felt so cleaned out. I got super into organizing things again, which was kind of interesting. Like, I've used a bullet journal for a long time, one of these,
Mhm.
and I was kind of falling out of the system and not using it as much as I should have. And I got so into it again. Like, I went and got the bullet journal book and reread it. And like, I was doing that and organizing things, and like, zero procrastination. It was just like task, task,
Huh.
task. I was just kind of clicking through them. And I'm like, man, I feel different. And I think informationally, the water in my body had been informed by a lot of noise, as it would be for anybody in the with a modern life. And all that noise just got pushed out. It's just
Mhm.
gone. And then you have this clean slate where you can kind of start over. It's awesome. I mean, I would say for anyone who's an entrepreneur or has a high stress job or whatever, if you can find the time to do it, even a shorter one, it's worth it just for that benefit alone, much less the physical.
Yeah. It seems like it's a really good full biological reset.
It is. It is. It's the only thing that comes close is a sauna and niacin detox if you do the full 21 days.
Whoa.
That I would say that's number two, but this, as far as a detox goes, is number one. It's just super hard.
What I'm hearing is the perfect protocol is to do the 21 sauna, niacin detox leading up to it, and then to do this, and you're fully prepared, and you also then get to enjoy the two best.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to, huge time investment, right? But if you want to reboot your life, we don't get a lot of second chances in life, right? But if you think of just, you want to hit the reset button and start over, maybe you've had some bad habits in health, maybe you feel fed up, overwhelmed, stressed. This will do it. I mean,
Mhm.
that would, I mean, it probably rewind your average person's biological age back at least a decade. Well, biological, right? Like, in quotation marks, but yeah, it's just detox first, man. I mean, you can add all the nutrients you want, micronutrients and cool fancy supplements, but if your cellular machinery is clogged up with poisons, it's just not going to work very well no matter what you throw it out. You got to get the gunk out of the gears first, clean them up and lubricate them, then you add the fuel back in. So I believe in a detox first approach.
Well, Theo, that gives me an idea. I have a couple epigenetic methylation biological age tests here. I will actually do that at some point. I'm going to work up to the 5 days of dry fasting, and I'll do a before and after test to see literally what impact does this have while keeping as much else constant as I can.
You know what? I would love to do my own interview of you for that. We should do it before and after. It'd be so fun to see. I had my own version of that using bioelectrical impedance analyzers for the
Yeah.
cell health score.
Yes.
So that was something, because I really wanted to know, are my cells de-aged by doing a dry fast, and are they holding more water after a dry fast?
Mm.
And the answer unequivocally was yes on both. But I know exactly what test you're talking about. I didn't do that. I would love to see your results.
Yeah. Also, do you know for the water phase angle test, have there been any research into this? Has there been correlations into how this compares to other forms of biological age testing?
Oh yeah. I mean, this was first used in the 1930s. That was when it was discovered, and then it was used in research as a hot topic in the 1960s, mid 60s, early 80s. The first commercial units came about, and then, I mean, the NHANES 3 study, which was like, I think it was like 30,000 people or something, where they were basically just gathering metrics on average Americans between. I think that study ran from the early 80s to the late 90s. They used they used the phase angle. That's actually where a lot of the data was generated to do the charts for it, which is kind of funny. So if you like that body of data is what they use for the reference ranges. So you're actually comparing yourself to somebody from the 1980s or the 90s who was not exposed to like
Yeah.
tons of EMF and like just all the crazy stuff that we have now, blue light being another cellular stressor, right? Like they weren't on screens in the 80s and really the 90s. So like if you for that reference range, like if you have a high score, you're like really high because those people were healthier back then. But for whatever reason, the community that has embraced phase angle and uses it the most is the athlete community. So like high level, like Olympic athletes, sports teams, they measure and track phase angle. On the popular consumer side, I was first exposed to it going to Bulletproof Labs. I think it's now Upgrade Labs in Santa Monica. It was like Dave Asprey's, playroom basically, and they had an in-body machine. So you'll see these in gyms from time to time, and they have the little plates you stand on, and you grab the handles, and then it would tell you your phase angle. What was interesting is none of the employees there could explain what it actually was, and it took me. I can see why, because it's like difficult to understand until you read like a ton on it and you digest it, and you're like, oh, okay, it basically is telling you how old your cells are. And there's debate in the community, like in body runs the DC electrical current through your feet and through your hands. It's both thick tissue, especially on your heels, that increases resistance. RGL systems, what I have, they use electrodes and you stick them not on those areas. And supposedly it gives you more accurate reading, but it's harder to do. So, but yeah, I think it's a great reflection of cellular age, because I measured a friend of mine who had a lot of early life and even prenatal heavy metals exposure from her mother's amalgams. And then also the area she grew up in, she had some mercury toxicity exposure. I measured her and her phase angle is terrible for her age. It's literally for somebody 20 years older than her.
Wow.
And it's like, okay, well, what is doing that to her cells at a cellular level? And it's probably the metals, because when we got her going on EDTA, her hair changed color. It was starting to go gray and it went dark again. And then she even had thinning hair in the temples here, or not temples, the whatever this area is called. And it grew back in. She's got all these baby hairs covering that area now. Isn't that wild? I mean, an EDTA is like what, $8 a bag for like a year's supply.
Yeah. Theo, how are you doing on time?
I'm doing good. I've got what is it, 12:30? I mean, so yeah, I mean, we've got an hour and a half. Or you want to do any wrap up questions or anything else about the dry fast? I mean, I want to help people. I want to give them something they can take and use. Like what would help your audience the most?
Well, yeah, we'll definitely talk more about the dry fast. But before we go on to that subject, about the speed that the phase angle changes, like that's the issue with some of the biological age testing options out there, is that they either change so fast that if I have one bad night of sleep or I eat one piece of food that's a little stale right before, it'll like just destroy my score. Or it's like, okay, this is how you were 9 months ago.
Yeah.
But if you made a change and you were doing it right for 6 months, it wouldn't reflect as like a much higher score.
It's the phase angle. So what's interesting about that is that everything you do in life contributes to the phase angle, and it's hard to move the needle on it. I know you gotta have a lot of inputs and change a lot for a period of time to do it, but the dry fast, it changed it in a week. It was like it was a crazy difference. I think when I was researching how to understand phase angle and use it, because I really wanted to do that measurement before and after the dry fast. Shoot, I lost my train of thought. Guess I need to do another dry fast. What was I gonna say?
When you were researching the phase angle because you really wanted to compare before and after.
Yeah, there was something, I don't know. We'll come back to it. But I took the phase angle every day during the dry fast too. And it was weird because at first it kept going up and up and up and up and up. And then it just crashed like day 6. It was like went way
Hmm.
down because I think my body was just like, whoa, this is bad. And then the day after, it was super high, like in the
Hmm.
nines, and then it went down a little bit and kind of stabilized. But it's still higher than it was before I started, and we're like 3 months after that now. But yeah, phase angle is a good one, man. I hope it becomes more popular.
Yeah, I've done some of the in-body scans, so I'm curious to go back and look and see
You should look
what my
at them.
scores are.
Yeah, you should. You should. So if you started with the in body, just keep testing with that, and then it'll like the ranges will be the same for you. But you wouldn't want to go from an in body to an RJL systems because they use different methodology and the electrodes go in a different place. But super cool. Like, I mean, I think it's a really cool score because every input that you do in life. Oh, I remember I was going to say, exercise seems to shift it the most.
Uh,
So which makes sense. I mean, think of all the good downstream effects from exercise. Like it's literally everything. It's detox. You're stretching and pulling the fascia. So fascia is piezoelectric. It generates electrical current when it's twisted, just like a piezo crystal, quartz crystal. So you get electron donation from that, and you're moving lymph around, and you're probably speeding up cellular metabolism. So that seems to affect it the most, as does proper hydration. I did an experiment on my mom because she's 79 now, and older people don't drink enough water. They just don't, and they go so long without drinking water, their hypothalamus becomes atrophied, and hypothalamus drives your thirst response, and so then they don't have a thirst
oh,
response anymore. So every time I go back to where my mom lives, I want to help her out with her health. And so I measured her phase angle right when I got back there, and got her phase angle score and stuff, which was on the low end of average for her age. And then I made her drink water every day that had hemiconfulvic trace minerals in it, because that's a super strong electrolyte, and so it increases cellular hydration. And then I measured her exactly 7 days later, and her phase angle was much better, just from
wow.
the increased hydration of the cells. So she didn't do anything different. Everything else was the same. So it's kind of cool to measure stuff like that.
Yeah, that's really cool. And have you seen overtraining or like training, say, more than X amount of time over X amount of days leads to a decrease in phase angle? Or is it one of the rare cases where more really is better?
I haven't personally experimented with that. I do have a lot of experience with overtraining, and I wish I had access to this information
Mm.
at that time. I mean, it's past a certain point, right? Like the dose makes the poison, they say. So, are you super into physical training? Like, what do you do in that realm?
Yeah, I mean, I train often. I
Hmm.
do strength and power and some like
Yep,
lactate tolerance training just for,
always fun.
yeah,
Yeah,
always
yeah,
fun. And
yeah,
then I like to mix it up and I'll play some sports.
yeah.
I'll go out back. I have a backpacking trip planned for
Nice.
next week. So yeah, I just try and mix it up. I like to kiteboard and do different things. So it's
Yeah.
more just like training for overall life.
Yeah, yeah, that's cool. I had a partial sports scholarship in university for Olympic style taekwondo, and
Hmm.
the coaches we had at the time were they believed in overtraining physically for a mental benefit. It's like really old school, and it just ran my body into the ground. I was injured all the time. My immune system was depressed, so I always had
Mm.
colds, and it wasn't good. And nowadays, I focus a lot on calisthenics. I really
Uh,
enjoy, body weight strength training. Of course, there's the free diving. I don't surf very much anymore because the free diving kind of took over. But I've recently I had a friend of mine, he's 45, and he did this thing for a year, and he actually tracked his blood work. And I saw a picture of him with his shirt off, and the guy looked like an action figure. I was like, dude, are you on TRT? Like, what are you doing? He's like, no. So he was doing a 3-minute cold immersion immediately prior to working out for a year.
yes.
And I'd never heard of it before because it seems like a lot of people do cold plunges after
After.
working out, which supposedly I've now learned depresses the beneficial hormones. And so a couple weeks ago, I recently started doing that. just get in, do like a 4 or 5 minute cold immersion, and then I immediately go into the workout. And I think it's doing something, man. I'm like I can tell when I have more testosterone in my system when I'm working out because you feel like going more. And it's definitely doing something. I'm like, okay, like here's another inexpensive, like not fun hack. It seems like all the ones that work the best, they're usually inexpensive or free, and they're hard to do.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I first learned about cold preconditioning a little while back, and I've done it one time, but I just like the hassle of like going to for me, a commercial gym that has a cold plunge and then doing it and then getting out and drying off adequately, then like working out.
it sucks. Yeah. So where my office is, where I am now, is on a property that has a cold plunge tank and a garage gym. And so I can just go straight from that and into the workout. The only thing I've heard is like you're supposed to like do some kind of like warm up for 5 to 10 minutes because you can like shock your heart with cold blood. I haven't experienced that, but yeah, it's been really interesting. I'm like, okay, like cool. It's always like the free and inexpensive ones that are the best, right? Like not always, but like sunlight, cold exposure, working out, hill sprints, like I love what Mark Sisson has to say on this topic, because he's 70 something now. And, all the stuff he says on fitness is it's accurate.
Yeah. And that's where I like to use biomimicry. Like, sure, it's nice to be able to sun gaze, but if you're out late in the night or you can't do it for whatever reason, having some near infrared or red light can help. It's not a perfect substitute. It's not even close. There's like a lot of other benefits you get from those first morning rays of light. No technology can replicate, even come close. But also it's like a lot better to do this than to just go straight to your phone, your computer, getting blasted by blue light, which has its time and place, but not when it's flickering and coming from less than ideal sources.
Yeah, I agree. I actually used to have a couple red light panels, like the full body thing, and I actually got rid of them because of the flicker. They had a super high flicker rate, and I never noticed a huge benefit from them. There's so much sun that's abundantly available here that I could just go get actual full spectrum sun. Or what I've been using that is just great is like those red light bulbs that you use to heat chickens in the winter.
I have one over here.
They're great. Yeah, I think I was on Amazon. It was TheraBulb or Ruby Lux, I think is the other brand. Yep. And I'm like, dude, this thing is awesome. It's not flickering. It's an analog wave and it's like heating, but it still has like that deep red light benefit. I was like, this thing is great.
Yeah, I have mine on now right over here.
Yeah.
250 watts of incandescent light, I believe.
It's great. Yeah. There's a lady, Creatrix Solutions. She has a really interesting company. She makes some interesting products, but I know the sauna that she sells, she calls it the Sauna Fix. It's like a portable sauna, but she uses a version of those lights. They're like full analog, which is cool. But yeah, so I switched that $30 light bulb and I love it. I use it all the time.
Yeah. So a company called Sauna Space also has their own version of
with
this.
The tent. Yeah. I think that's the canvas tent one, right?
Yeah. And they also have like just a standalone bulb too. And they designed it in collaboration with, I think it's Brian Hoyer, or a building biologist.
Yeah. He's got some really good information, man. It's, all the EMF stuff. That's another one. You can get obsessed with like EMF mitigation and all that. I went through that phase. It's the sauna that I got my mom set up with is it's owned by Jacuzzi now, but it was
Clearlight?
Yes, the low EMF ones. Yeah.
Well, Theo, I want to go back to dry fasting because we opened that page, we didn't close it out, and to make this practical, first of all, like, what was the experience like? Because I'm going to be going through this at some point, and I'm curious what it was. And then also, like, what are the steps? Because we mentioned that you want to prepare for it. You want to start small with just a day, then 2 days and 3
Yep.
days. In the book, The Phoenix Protocol, he also mentioned that like the fat burning and a lot of the benefits only start around day 3. I'm not sure how important that is. Like obviously you're getting other things out of it as well. But like let's go through the practical side of dry fasting now.
Well, if you do a 1 to 2 day dry fast, you're going to reset your gut. So it's like 24 hours for the cells in your gut lining to replace themselves. So you give your gut a break. Let's say you've got a leaky gut because your tight junctions aren't together. You got gut inflammation, bloat. You do a 1 to 2 day dry fast, you're going to reset that, and your gut inflammation will go away. So that is why I will do a 1 or 2 day dry fast, is literally just for a gut reset. That's the benefit there. 3 days, I see really the only benefit of going past 2 days is just for training, like training mentally, because by day 3 is hard, dude. Actually, it was on both my 5 and 7 day. It was one of the hardest days because you burn through all your glucose and then you switch to a ketogenic metabolism that day. But it takes a while and it doesn't really kick in to high gear until the next day. So if you do, so that those are the benefits of those. And then if you go past 3, so you don't interrupt your stem cell production moving forward in life. If you go past 3 days, then you're stuck. You got to do 5, because day 4 is a stem cell release. And then day 5 is consolidation of that. And then you end it, whatever time, day 5. And if you go past 5 days, then you have to do 7. So, because day 6 is a stem cell release. And it's like he talks about in the book, but there's like very specific cycles that you move through. So as far as what it felt like, this time around, I actually recorded a video every day. They're like 2 to 4 minutes long. And if you find my channel on YouTube, which I just restarted, I got deleted during the pandemic because I put out a video about 5G. They just nuked my channel, man. There's all these videos just gone.
Oh,
but if you search for Forgotten Health or my 7-day dry fast experience on YouTube, you'll see it. And I record a video every day, which is really hard, dude. So for me, here's what I'm going to say to people. So I've had a lot of my own customers and subscribers do dry fast now because I've talked a lot about it. And for a lot of them, and if you watch August Dunning on his channel, it's like August is walking around on the beach holding this big boom, microphone camera set up, and he's fine. And I'm like, dude, how are you walking around? This is crazy. And then I've had customers do it where they're 60s, 70s, even somebody in their early 80s. And they're like, yeah, I just did it 5 days. Totally fine. I was driving around, hanging out with friends. And I'm like, what? Are you serious? So, but I'm just saying, for me personally, I have a faster metabolism. And I think that actually makes it harder. I literally just had a customer email me, did a 7-day. And he's like, yeah, I felt completely fine the whole time. And
Whoa.
I was like, hey, if you don't mind me asking, like, how much body fat do you have? And he's like, a lot, like way too much. I probably need to lose like 50 pounds. And so, I mean, think about it. His body's just shredding up all that fat for water and stuff. And he was like working the whole time. So it's just my experience for how it felt is that my brain and energy by day 3 is just completely crashed. And I would say I'm functioning at like a 20-30% brain capacity. And I could barely string an email together and respond to people. And I just have zero motivation to do anything. So obviously I was still walking around. I was able to talk a little bit because I was recording the videos. But as the time goes by, it gets harder and harder to talk. And my desire to talk disappeared. Because your brain is not working very well, it's like hard to do anything other than kind of just consume entertainment. I know Dunning talks about that on his videos. He like watches James Bond movies and stuff. But yeah, that was basically, it's just like this slow decline into just for me a malaise of low energy and almost apathy and boredom. It doesn't, you don't realize how much of our life is filled up by these rituals that occupy our time. But even just waking up and getting a glass of water, that's gone. Eating
Oh,
gone,
yeah.
cognitively demanding work gone. So you really got to plan for it. I have a friend who's going to do one in between Christmas and New Year's because that's like a really slow time. Yeah, but not hungry, not thirsty. Mouth was dry. My first time, my 5 day, I would rinse my mouth out with water and spit it out. That made it worse.
Oh,
It actually like kind of stimulated a thirst reflex. So
oh.
this time around, I didn't know. I did a hard drive. There's like no water, nothing, and it's it's not fun. But it didn't make I mean, I wasn't hungry and I wasn't thirsty, which sounds weird, but it's just the facts.
That's the impression that I got back when I used to dry fast. I did 3 days, 5 days, 7 days one time. And one time after like my 5 day, I went to the gym and I somehow was able to like deadlift and not deadlift my PR, but pretty close to it.
Well,
And
on a
I
dry
can't,
fast or a wet fast?
no, wet fast. I've
Oh,
never
wet
dry
fast. Okay,
fasted.
yeah,
Yeah. And I've really cut back on wet fasting because I don't think makes that much sense for someone at
yeah.
my stage of life. And I can imagine that when you're dry fasting, like really even being outside in hot weather, it must be really difficult if it's 90 plus degrees outside and you try and go outside and you're dry fasting.
So that actually felt good. It was 90 degrees and 90% humidity where I
Oh,
was for part of the time. And your metabolism is so depressed and like your circulation, your blood gets really thick. And so you're actually cooler than you normally would be because your
mm.
circulation isn't as good. And, but yeah, I would say day 3 was the hardest on both the 5 and the 7 day was one of the hardest. And then day 6 was just wretched. It was just, my temperature was spiking and then going down, and my blood pressure was going high and then going down. My heart rate it wasn't all over the place, but I could definitely tell like, oh, my heart's running fast, and then it would slow down, which is a normal part of the cycle that you go through. But it just didn't let up. I was
Mm.
like, I was so uncomfortable. And then a lot of people don't sleep the night day 4 and day 6, and like day 6 I didn't sleep very much.
That was actually one of the mechanisms that August Dunning mentioned is the thickening of the blood, how that interacts with the brain and causes a beneficial feedback loop.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't think for some reason, like I've had so many people that hear about dry fasting and they're like, "Oh, I just don't eat or drink water." Okay, and they don't do any research and they just jump into it. And I had one guy do that, didn't read the book, didn't do any research, didn't even bother to watch any YouTube videos on it, which there's plenty now. And then, he was like panic texting me on day 3, and I'm like, dude, this is a normal part of the cycle. You're just switching over into ketosis now from a glucose metabolism. And he ended up interrupting his dry fast on day 4, which
Oh.
is the middle of his stem cell release, because he was driving his car around and going to see friends, and then his friends told him he's going to die and that he looked terrible, and then he broke his fast, and that's his stem cell production now is depleted, not for life. I'm sure it'll bounce back, but for a long time. So I don't know why I think it's because it's free and it seems really simple. So people just,
Yeah.
cool, I'll just do that. But there's super specific cycles, and like I'll tell you, they the way the book describes them, the Phoenix Protocol, is exactly what they feel like.
One of the things he also mentioned in the book is the use of showering or bathing as being really helpful because of the water not going down through your gut the same way, but it
Right.
permeates through your skin and into your cells and provides benefit.
hmm I did that. So I enhanced that a little bit. August, I think, came to natural health kind of later in life. And so wasn't as aware of like some detox things you can do. He's getting a lot better about it now, though, because I know he's recommending people take charcoal for a week before.
Mm.
But I would soak in a bath from day 3 onwards, and I put 2 cups of 35% food grade hydrogen peroxide in the bath. And so, oxygen is a detoxicant. And so all that crap that was probably being injected into my bloodstream from the lymph as my cells were pushing toxins out goes into my bloodstream, but then I'm soaking in a bath, and I was doing it for like 2 hours because I was bored. And So 2 cups, 35% food grade hydrogen peroxide. When that encounters something organic, it converts to a reactive form of oxygen. And so that was just, I could feel it. Like you literally are laying there and you're so sensitive to everything. I was like, oh, wow, I actually have energy right now.
Wow.
And you could concentrate better. And so like your body, I didn't feel more thirsty or less thirsty. I didn't feel thirsty at all. I did feel something different related to hydration for sure. So that was super helpful. I recommend anybody that has the time and space and a bathtub to do that. So if it just make sure you get 35% food grade hydrogen peroxide. That's really important.
Gotcha. We've been
Yeah.
going for a while. We'll start to wind this one down. Do you have
Yeah.
any other quick tips for people who are interested in exploring this? I don't know if you've shared them in other videos or
With the
resources I
dry
can point them
fasting.
to. With dry fasting, how to do it successfully. And obviously, I'd assume that if someone has a medical condition, they want to consult with their physician or
Yeah, so
medical professional.
if you have never done a detox before, don't do a dry fast. It's going to stress your kidneys out like crazy and your liver too. So I would say if you want to do a hardcore detox, try to do a sauna and niacin detox. If you can't do that one, do a liver detox because that will move the needle and it's like really easy to do. And there's many instructions online for how to do that. And it'll cost you like $4 in ingredients. And then if you do want to do a dry fast, if I could do it all over again, I would have started with a 1 and then I would have done a 2,
Okay.
a 2-day. And then after that, I probably would have gone straight into a 5. I went straight into a 5 and it was hell. It was just like mental anguish, man. I was like, oh my gosh. But afterwards, I felt freaking amazing, dude. Like, I mean, how often are we handed a reset button on cellular health in life? Not very often. This is one of them, and it's free.
Yeah.
So, well, it's free in financial cost, but it's not free in time cost. So I will say that. So that was one of the things that was a little frustrating for me with the 7-day is like I really wanted to get back to work afterwards, and it was like a week recovery, man. I mean, it's like it was like having a surgery. It was like it kind of felt like recovering from a surgery, and in a sense, I was having surgery, it was like cellular surgery. Yeah, I would say work up to it. Read the Phoenix Protocol. Read Dr. Philonos' 20 Questions and Answers on Dry Fasting if you could find a copy. Watch the YouTube videos that August Dunning put out, or the ones that I did under Forgotten Health, and then go for it. I mean, I think it's one of the most powerful things you can do for your health.
Theo, we've covered a lot of ground today.
Yeah.
Tons of different topics. Cool to hear all your background. And these are the types of things you share in your newsletter. It's one of the few that I've been subscribed to and has remained subscribed to for a while now. Keep putting those out. And if people want to either follow your work or to connect with you, to see some of the videos and other content you release, how do they find you?
Easiest way is just go to forgottenhealth.com. The site has some sections that I'm still finishing and working on improving, but forgottenhealth.com, because that has all my products. It's got videos on there. It's got some old blog posts. Like you can see I'm an actual real person. But yeah, that's kind of the catch-all site for everything. And the 5G guide that I got banned on YouTube for is available for free on there too.
Beautiful. I still have a whole list of other things to talk about with you, so we'll save that for hopefully another time.
We'll do another one. I'd love it. Yeah, I'd love to interview you, and I'd love to see and hear about your before and after test results, because it's gonna move the needle a lot for you, and it'd be really interesting to see.
Yeah, and thank you for giving us realistic expectations about what it's like. It's not like it doesn't feel like light and airy fairy the whole time. There's like a real art to it, and expect that it's not always going to be comfortable. And if you're going to schedule it, you can plan to have the hardest days land on the weekend so that when you return, even though it's a longer process to return,
Yes.
you're returning a little bit recharged at least.
Yeah, I was able to work the first 2 days this recent one. So day 1 and day 2, I was responding to emails, knocking stuff out. It was more or less fine. Day 3, I could work a half day, but then when that ketotic, that you switch over that ketosis metabolism, I was like, all right, dude, I gotta lay down.
Yeah.
So cool, man. Well, hey, I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you. And do you have any final words of wisdom, parting advice, or ways you'd like to wrap this one up for anyone who's made it this far?
Yeah, and yeah, this episode was a long one, but hopefully a good one. Be consistent. That's kind of my thing. Natural health is all about consistency. So like those 8 micronutrients we talked about, whether you're getting your vitamin, DNA from cod liver oil like I do, or you're doing a supplement, but just be consistent with that every day. And over time, like cumulatively, it just builds up. It's like consistency is key. So yeah, that's my thing.
Perfect. Well, excellent way to end this one. Theo, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
You bet. Appreciate it.
I hope that this has been helpful for you. If you enjoyed it, subscribe and hit the thumbs up. I love knowing who's in the 1% committed to reaching their full potential. Comment 1% below so that I know who you are. For all the resources and links, meet me on my website at mindbodypeak.com. I appreciate you and look forward to connecting with you. As a reminder, the information depicted in this video is for information purposes only. Please consult your primary healthcare professional before making any lifestyle changes.